Before we get into it today, I just wanted to make sure this was in here somewhere because it's timely, but not relevant to the podcast at hand. On February 21st, Russian President Vladimir Putin declared war on the state of Ukraine and invaded it. Actually, sometime before that. This has been a long time coming. There's a chance it could escalate into something much larger than it currently is. But even as it stands, as things are, a lot of people are being disrupted and killed by the conflict going on in Ukraine. And this is the first time something like this happened while I was cognizant of politics. So I'm quite aware of it, and I want to encourage everybody listening out there to continue to keep tabs on this. I'm not asking you for your thoughts and prayers. I'm asking you to read up on it and keep an eye on things, because depending on how large and important this gets, it may be a significant drawback to the life expectancy of the human race. Or it could be another Afghanistan kind of situation where it's a 20 some odd year spending project for the military industrial complex. One of those two, I can imagine. So yeah, that's not what we're talking about today in the podcast, but I wanted to make sure that anybody who was not aware is aware that in fact this is a war, and in fact it is a potentially catastrophic one, and it needs our attention. It needed our attention several decades ago, but it needs our attention now as well. Thank you, and we'll get on with it. You're listening to Through Our Lens with the Disabled and Non-Disabled Alliance at Sacramento State, a club, organization, whatever, for disabled students, staff, and their allies to discuss and educate each other about disability-related topics, advocate on behalf of disabled students and the community, and to hang out together and just be a community.
So we want to be more recognizable to Sac State. So please join the conversation by following and messaging us on Instagram at Dana@SacState. It's DANA@SacState. Hi everyone, welcome to the 6th episode of Through Our Lens with the Disabled and Non-Disabled Alliance. My name is Brian Tao, and I'm one of the officers for Dana, and the host of this podcast. Our topic today is going to be on the Disability Day of Mourning, what it is and why is it so important. And I have a few announcements before we kind of get into it. We're hosting a Disability Day of Mourning virtual event on March 1st from 5:30 to 7:30. So if you have time, please feel free to come here. We'll kind of explain to you why. Also, our next club meeting will be on this Friday, March 3rd, where we will talk about disability as a form of diversity. And yeah, and as always, it is going to be a very free-form format, so expect a conversation with many tangents, just like how a real conversation would go. And as always, I'm here with the president and founder of Dana, William and Rian.
Hello.
But today is going to be a little bit different. We finally have our first guest, William Wen, to join the conversation. So William is a really recent member of Dana, and we only met him last week in our meeting. And I wanted to give some kind of introduction to kind of talk about ourselves and to kind of get to know Will better. Yeah, and also there's two Williams here. So when I mention William, it's going to be the president. And when I say Will, it is going to be our guest, William Wen. Will Wen.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, so let's start with some introductions. William, can you go first?
Yeah, sure. So hi, I'm William. You listeners will know who I am, I guess, or at least some of what I am. I'm a philosophy major. I'm visually disabled, but it's not terribly visible, so I tend to benefit from the fact of not being profiled. And I'm the nominal president of the Disabled and Non-Disabled Alliance. I help where I can.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then Will.
Hi everybody. My name is Will. And I'm the And I'm the student affected. And I'm in 5th year. I am majoring in architecture, interior architecture. And I wanted to major this major because I see disability in for the building. Sorry, I just
No
can't.
worries. No worries.
And because the ADA is not widely adopted on building, that's why I want to major in interior architecture.
You're
Mhm.
badly needed in the field, my friend.
You are.
Yep.
I mean, you know that, but yeah.
We want more universally designed stuff. And then Rian can go introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Rian Dinsans, the founder of Dana. My major is currently child development with a focus on elementary pre-credentials for teaching, but I'm currently reconsidering that path. We'll see where that takes me. I'm supposed to be in my fourth year, but I'm taking a gap year this year. And I want to be an educator of some sorts in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And William wants to be a politician. That's one of the things he wants to be.
Oh yeah.
You can't tell.
That'll become only
Yeah, if you
increasingly
can't tell.
obvious.
Okay.
My everything.
I should probably introduce myself. So my name is Brian Tao. I am a fourth year environmental studies major, and I want to be like an urban planner. I want to create better public transportation systems in a city like Sacramento because I don't really write it enough, and I want to write it, but it's not accessible most times. It's not efficient most of the time. I think that's it for all the introductions. Do we want to talk about like anything else about us?
Like personally,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anything.
I just really want to encourage everybody in this room and out there to like stay on those beneficent career paths. Way too many people are in school just to make money. And the result is the society we have now, where if people are making money just fine and everything's falling apart around us. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's I don't know. I don't really think about the money like for urban planning. But I do want to work for the state, so I'll make enough money to survive, at least. So where do you want to work at? Do you want to work like do you have an idea of a company?
I mean, I haven't thought about it, but I guess I want to do for stay too, like the after all the internship or everything, because they have like the internship for the state. So I might wanna apply for that first.
Yeah, absolutely apply for it. And like if you need help with like applying for the state, like as an internship as a student assistant, you can ask me because my student assistant position is with Cal Fire, the California Department of Fire Forestry and Fire Prevention. So if you need help, you can always ask me. And I think working for the state is so good, just for the benefits, honestly.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm like trying to make a difference in California.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that kind of like sort of, I guess, remote mutual aid is the general category for helping people with applying for internships and stuff. That is very much what the club is for, and on top of all else that we're trying to get started here. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
So I guess we'll just move on. So Ryan, can you explain a little bit more about the Disability Day of Mourning and why it is so important? And this is a very serious topic that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, so the Disability Day of Mourning is an annual event generally spearheaded by the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, but it is a national event taking place every year on March 1st. It focuses on honoring the lives of disabled people lost to filicide. Filicide is when your caretaker kills you. So disabled people that have been killed by siblings, parents, or home health aides, people like that, those are the people that we want to acknowledge the lives of during this event. And it's really important because this sort of thing isn't talked about a whole lot. And when it does appear in mainstream media, oftentimes, and I've seen this for myself, so I'm not making stuff up or anything. Oftentimes the sympathy from the public lies more with the killer rather than the victim, which is kind of why this day is important. It's a day to honor the victim and acknowledge the loss that has taken place rather than sympathize with the murderer and wonder, how this came about and if you would have done the same. And the answer is no, you wouldn't do the same because this isn't acceptable and it's not something that should be normalized. And yet, when we look at media coverage of these events, of these murders, it is very much normalized. So this is a day to fight back against that framing of disabled lives and to honor the people we've lost.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. It's really important to highlight who was murdered and who, yeah, it's just really important to highlight. I guess before we have like more of a conversation, I want to ask, what are you doing for our event?
Right, so we have a bit of an agenda going on. We're going to start off by introducing each other, doing a quick overview on how to access different services that can help you during the event and afterwards, such as mental health care and support, and also how the event will go. We'll jump right in with a reading of the names, the victims' names. We plan on doing the names of all victims from 2020 onwards. I'm not entirely sure how long that will take, but hopefully it shouldn't take longer than an hour since we only have 2 hours allotted for this event. Afterwards, we will do a moment of silence, which will be 1 minute and 20 seconds. It is this time specifically because it takes about an hour and 20 minutes to read all of the names that have been documented so far. And so it's kind of a way to honor the names that we did not have the time to read out loud. I will be doing a reading of Connecting Dots written by Bev Harp afterwards. And then to close it out, we'll have a open yet lightly moderated discussion on filicide and what actions we can take to help prevent it and bring justice to victims.
Yeah, I think that agenda sounds great and it's really important to highlight. I guess for me, it's important, like for reading all the names of who were murdered. It's important because it kind of highlights like how many there were. Like you could say, oh, only like 1,000 were murdered, but like 1,000 doesn't seem like a lot in your head. But when you actually read each name individually, it's a lot. It's a lot of people that has human feelings, that has a lot of different things. Yeah, and then
based on the list, the oldest name we have is from, I want to say, the 1970s, and that is a lot of names from the 1970s to today. That is a lot of names. And last year when we did this event, I decided to have us do from 2015 onwards. That took the full 2 hours. It took a long time to read all of the names, and that was just saying the name, their age, and when they died, just the month and a year. That was it, and it still took 2 full hours. Ended up going overtime a little bit too, and which is why I tried to shorten it this time. But if we did have more time, I'm sure that it would take probably 5 hours or more to read every single name on that list. There are a lot of names. They all matter. And unfortunately, we don't have the time to read all of them, but they do all matter. And I think it's important to look through the names for yourself. You can do that on disabilitymemorial.org. They actually have a running website that updates frequently to memorialize all of these victims as far back as we know of. So if you want to check that out for yourself, which I highly encourage, that's where you can do it.
Absolutely. So Will, what do you think about all of these things? Do you think it's important?
So yes, I think it's really important to like say older them because they are the victim that sometimes they cannot do anything. Just like me, I depend on my physical um, activity to my caregiver. So sometimes they they want to like speak out to their caregiver, but they cannot do anything. So I think if we know about them, I think we like people like disabled like me will understand more and kind of like you know um well I just think that if for me I know the name I will like really feel sympathy. Yeah, that's what I think right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like putting voices like to the voiceless, right? Like they can't speak, and we're speaking for them in a way, right?
Yeah,
Pretty
yes.
hard to speak when you're dead. So
Yeah, it is.
that's part of the problem, too, is that a lot of these names that are added every year are actually murder victims from years and years ago that we only just heard about now,
Mm-hmm.
which is exactly why this is important to do it, because that whole thing about being voiceless because you're dead, your murder might not be discovered for years afterwards. That's just a horrible thing to have happen and to even think about. That's why we need to speak up about this.
I like the sort of, it will sound pejorative, put it this way, but I can't think of a better wording. I like the theatrics of individual names being read. I think oftentimes the way we talk about things in our society, people occur in groups when it's convenient for the powerful, and they occur as individuals when it's convenient for the powerful, and never is it not convenient for the powerful, right? So if we try to approach like individualism as a distinctive or as a consistent idea about how people are, then each individual person lost to the constraints of the society at hand, and moreover the individuals who actually acted out those constraints. uh, each one of those individuals is a person who is important, in the same way that each individual would be an individual if the person was right in front of you. I think it would be very easy to summarize things and speak about filicide victim as one big group, because that would allow administrations of various kinds to blow past the whole presentation. Hey, this thing is an ongoing kind of phenomenon. We don't have to talk about it anymore. Taking the time to understand each individual person as an individual person, who is the victim of filicide, has the right gravity, and it treats the concepts more correctly than usually we probably would.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Thank you for putting that into words.
Yeah, thank you as well. I guess Rian, can you think of any specific examples that like a case of someone being murdered?
I remember one case vividly from last year. I believe his name was Alejandro. He was autistic. He was just a kid. I think he was 8 or 10 years old. And his mother brought him to the bridge of this water reservoir and pushed him in and tried to drown him there. The first time he was rescued, he was found and rescued, and he survived. And then she did it again, and she succeeded. And that specific case sticks out in my mind a lot because it was one of the first that I had heard about when I was at a point in my life where I could understand the gravity of what had happened and was conscious enough to remember it and to internalize it. And there was one other case too, which is similar, but I don't know if it was counted as the same thing within the community of people with my own disability, spinal muscular atrophy. It was years and years back, so I don't remember when exactly this happened, but there was this little girl who had my disease, and she had internalized all of this negativity and ableism about her disease. I don't know if she got it from her parents or from her doctors or the media or friends, or if she just decided that her disease was too much for her to manage. But she told her parents that she wanted to die on her birthday and to have a death party, just one last hoo-ha before going.
Mm-hmm.
Any other parent would be like, oh my God, no, right? But her parents were like, okay. And they went ahead and did it. They had a party for their daughter's death. They were okay with with their daughter wanting to die because of her disability. And I think that speaks volumes about what we consider acceptable as a society in regards to disabled people versus able people. And, there is something to say about assisted suicide and the moralities on that, but I don't think any parent should be okay with their child, their 5-year-old daughter wanting to die. And I really think that her parents are complicit in her death. I personally blame her parents for letting her think that, for, encouraging that mindset and making it happen. But with Alejandro, the autistic boy that was drowned, he didn't have a say. A lot of people on that list, I want to bet every person on that list did not have a say in when, where, and how they died. Their life was taken from them. And it shouldn't have been. It really shouldn't have been. Every person on that list had their whole life ahead of them. And they should have been allowed to see it to the end on their own terms.
Yeah, what kind of surprised me is that the girl you were mentioning, that she was only 5 and she wanted like a death party. I think the first thing they should have done is just get some help, get some mental health, go see a therapist to kind of discuss those kind of things. That's awful to hear.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's the thing.
The story about the girl, I feel really bad. Like how their parents accept that. Even if the only 5, and 5 seems to have a lot, like a long future in the future. So it can be anything.
Yeah, 5 is so young to kind of think about losing your life for something.
And it makes you wonder where she got those ideas.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
So the girl is Rian, you think what year?
What disease?
No, like what year did he ask for that? Like 2000 something?
Yeah. So like
Like what?
when were
Yeah.
they murdered essentially? When was she murdered?
I cannot recall. It was years ago, probably in the mid 2010s, maybe earlier.
Yeah.
I remember reading about it in the monthly magazine that the organization centered on our community sends out, and I have not been able to shake it from my memory since. It's kind of haunted me since then. But it definitely left a mark on me, and it relatively recent, yes, but not super recent. But I would not be surprised if something similar happened again, because this kind of ties into what I wanted to talk about next, is that the messaging that disabled people receive about their quality of life and their disability, especially when it comes to organizations and people pushing for cures. The messaging on that is extremely detrimental, and it can lead to some very dark places. And I think that also contributes to why people think it's okay to murder the people under their charge, because they think, oh, their life is so horrible, I'll just kill them and then they'll be at peace, right? But that's not how that works. It really isn't. And it's hard to acknowledge how horrible it is when the idea that disability is worse than death is stuck in your mind. It's most prominent, I've noticed, within autism circles meaning autism parents and organizations committed to curing autism. Autistic people, on the other hand, are generally fine with how they live and who they are and their disability. And sure, it can be hard to manage, but I think you'd be hard pressed to find someone autistic who wants to either be cured or die. I think you find that a very difficult task, but a lot of parents and people take it upon themselves to kill their artistic charges because they think it's worse than death. They think that the suffering is worse than death. They assume that there is suffering. And I've noticed the same thing happening within other communities centered on other types of disabilities where, in the spinal muscular atrophy community, there is such a strong push for a cure and such a focus on, the suffering and lack of quality of life for patients with SMA, but it's not actually that bad for everybody. And it is a vicious disease. It's muscle degenerative disease. It can very much impact your quality of life, but just because you're in a wheelchair or you need extra help breathing or eating, just because you have a G tube, none of that should mean that you will absolutely be better off dead. That's not something other people get to decide. And, that's something that only you can get to decide. But even then, it's not a common solution to whatever struggles you're facing. It's not the most effective solution. And if you really genuinely think that that is the answer, I would still want you to seek treatment for depression and, PTSD healing, whatever you need. I would look into mental health help first before deciding that you're better off dead. Because even then, it's such an extreme response to a struggle, a certain subset of struggles. And
Yeah.
a lot of people do die from SMA as young babies, or because, a cold can take you out if you're weak enough. But it's not an excuse to murder.
Yeah, absolutely.
not.
I think similar to my community, I have Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and like I just read like on Facebook pages like, oh, they want a cure for this like suffering to kind of end, but I think they can still live a fulfilling life, even with all these disabilities that you have. I know for me, like my type of fulfilling life is working for the state, making a difference in public transit. That's what I want to do, even though that I'm gonna get a lot weaker. I'm gonna lose a lot of more stuff, but I can still do stuff, make a difference.
Yeah, just like me, I have the chain too. So my hand is actually weaker than you, Brian. But then I just I just do like go to school doing everything what I love. That's when I just forget all about like the weakness. The like I actually have YouTube and sometimes it's hurt, but then if like I I would say if I'm busy what I love, like what I do, I just not really like mentally feel bad about my disability. And sometimes when
Yeah.
I go out to the public, a lot of people I would say specifically, but they actually a lot of Asian people they really like look at me, but not in a bad way. But I didn't feel like embarrassed or anything. I just like I just think in that I'm just a normal people.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. I can think of similar stories, like whenever like my relatives come over and like they'll just say like in Hmong, like, "Oh, I love you, I love you. I hope you're doing good." And it's like, why are you telling me that you love me? It's not like I'm gonna die or anything.
yeah, that's what happened too.
Mhm.
But except for my brothers, they know me enough, so they sometimes they just like be really a I don't want to cuss because it's a podcast, but they just make me feel like I'm a normal person and I say stuff with my brother, so it's it's really fun. But then with people that don't know me enough, they assume a lot.
Yeah, you can always count on siblings to be real with you. I mean, sure they'll punch out of you and you'll punch out of them back,
Yeah.
but like they'll be real with you, right? They don't see you as different. You're
Yeah,
just
they
their
be real.
sibling to them, They grew up with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, like someone to me, like all my siblings, like don't treat me any different from like other people. Like I'm a person too. I'm my own person. Yeah. So William, so what do you think of all of this?
I mean, I guess I could contribute just the personal side for me, um, because I'm sure my sort of experience with this exact phenomenon is nothing like a lot of other people's experiences with it. But there is a day-to-day sort of awareness of the kinds of things that I'll probably never be able to do successfully. I mean, my bookshelf is filled with tomes that I'm probably never going to get to read in their entirety because there just isn't time. Um, I consider a lot of what it is to lead a fulfilling life to be internal. Maybe that's just my nature of it, and the nature of having this visual thing, this limit on sight, and particularly the speed and efficacy of reading, is that building that internal life is much more challenging for me. And there are lots of sort of, I don't know, if I were of a persuasion where I wanted to get into sports, I would be deeply disappointed by that fact because I'm not compatible with anything that requires a large a good fidelity of like hand-eye coordination. Um, Gaming much the same way. I'm not into competitive gaming, but am I not into competitive gaming because because I don't want to be, or am I not into competitive gaming as a response to like the pressures, the life long knowledge of the fact that I'm not ever going to be able to have competitive advantage or have competitive viability in a video game context. I mean, that was burned into me as a elementary school age kid during playing like Call of Duty on a PS2 with my friend who didn't quite get the fact of being visually disabled because he wasn't. These kinds of things, I don't know, they naturally weigh on a person. It is a far cry from that to you're better off dead,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, but is it so obvious to people who don't have that kind of experience? Because I don't know. I want to say as well that while we have time, that I think there are reasons why we see in media coverage that oftentimes the murderer is more the sympathetic character than the victim, and that's a relatively easy narrative to spin out of the whole situation, precisely because it's got a kernel of truth in there, right? There are systemic forces at play when we talk about filicide. For example, we talked about it before, that if you're a person with a disability, it's much harder to get things like health insurance. It's much harder it's much more financially taxing, I mean, literally, just to go about a day-to-day life. And if you're, a parent who doesn't necessarily get enough like financial help with that, enough in the way of day-to-day help with things like assisting your disabled child, that's extremely taxing mentally and emotionally as well. It wouldn't help if you were also a parent like convinced of some profound form of ableism, wherein the physical and maybe even cognitive or sensory limitations amount to being worse than death. That wouldn't help either. And so there are social system-wide forces at work when we talk about filicide in a way that is much harder to dismiss than when we talk about like over policing in Black communities and stuff, because that basically has no excuse. So what I mean to suggest is that people, while people need to be held accountable, victims need to be remembered, it's also true that to like combat filicide requires material change in the circumstances in which people are expected to live and to thrive, because there are material reasons why filicide is happening.
I do want to say, Asan, the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, they do have a frequently asked questions about filicide, and one of their main points is that filicide is not necessarily caused by a lack of services or inaccessibility of services, because there are plenty of people out there who refrain from killing their disabled charges despite a lack of services, despite support. While it can be a contributing factor, I really don't think focusing on that as a solution is going to be effective. I really think it's more a cultural framing of disability rather than a material needs being
I don't know that.
unmet. Because even wealthy families who have plenty of services, who have the resources to help manage the care of their disabled child, they still end up killing their children because they think they're better off dead than alive. And that to me kind of indicates that it's not a material problem. Material circumstances might contribute to it in some cases, but overall it's not a material problem, and the phenomenon itself is rooted in deep, pervasive ableism. And I also want to add that people who kill their children or their disabled charges do not necessarily have a mental illness. This comes up a lot whenever there's talk of a murder taking place. People always say, oh, the murderer must be mentally ill to have done this. And that's not the case. You can be perfectly sound mentally and still be a murderer. And having mental illness does not make you more vulnerable to murdering people. So I just wanted to put that out there as well.
It's like I would say as well that I think part of maybe where the attitude against disabled people comes from is, and I've mentioned it before as well, and it's not counterintuitive or anything, but there's a construct under any kind, under like a market system like ours, where and culture arises from it, where in such that we conflate usefulness to society with ability to expand someone else's capital, right? And by conceit, by definition, part of what we mean by disabled is being less good at that kind of thing. I don't know, less profitable employee, less profitable customer. Characteristically, not always, but usually. And translation, extrapolated across an entire society, the zeitgeist sort of adjusts, right? Where you see people understanding, contribution to society as the doing of a labor job, something in the job market. And if you're unable to do that kind of thing, it's very, or if you're such that people around you assume that you'll never be able to do that kind of thing, then it's very easy to sort of develop the attitude of the disabled person being useless or being worthless. And it follows directly from, or not directly, but it follows eventually from the sort of material arrangement of stuff where money is everything and labor gets you money. Anyway, so I would say that like there are systemic measures that need to be taken, but
Definitely,
attitudes are that arise from material situations can also be combated directly.
So Will, do you have anything to add, like for you about this topic?
So I was thinking about how what William just said about like as a society think about us less, that we cannot do less. So it was in my country, especially in Asian. So
Mhm.
country, that's one of, sorry, that sort of thing they think about us. Like I saw a lot of, not a lot, but in my town there's some disabled people. They just didn't get any kind of job. They just have to like go around the street and sell anything they have. But in America, because I was here 10 years ago, so I feel like here they have enough of like education and
Mhm.
accommodation when you go to work, and that means with that accommodation I can like do a lot of stuff, like, but it's not faster than the non-disabled people. But I would say if I have like, if we have like the time to do it, I guess we can do it if they allow the time.
Yeah, it's similar. Yeah, exactly. Like less kind of developed nations don't have all these structures for disabled people to work. Because I know like if I was like born in like Southeast Asia and Asia, then I wouldn't have had these opportunities. I might not even go to school. Maybe if I live in like the rural parts.
Yeah, that, and I didn't finish high school. I guess because I go to America. But
Mhm.
if I was still there, I don't think I can go into school or anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Like a lot of different countries have different structures, and I think that was important to kind of highlight. So I wanted to change like the topic a little bit. What can we do to kind of prevent like these acts of violence? Or yeah.
So, for one, it's both a legal and social problem. Um, it's not necessarily a hate crime to kill a disabled person because they're disabled in every state within the US. There are actually about 18 states that do not include any kind of hate crime law, including disability. That's a lot of states. There's one state that has disability in their hate crime law, but they don't really do anything about it. They just require data collection, and that is Indiana. And there are 32 states that include disability in their hate crime laws, and the hate crime laws are now criminal offenses and allowed increased sentences. These 32 states do include California, so we're good to go. But Florida, Idaho, Kansas, Kentucky, Michigan, Montana, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, Utah, Virginia, West Virginia, Arkansas, Georgia, South Carolina, and Wyoming, they all need to include the murder of disabled people for existing as disabled as a hate crime law. And that is something that we can all work together to help push through, both on a state level and a federal level. So that is one approach we can take. Another approach is to change the conversation, basically to center the victim, condemn the murderer, refuse to understand, excuse, justify, minimize, or normalize a parent killing their child. Basically make it unacceptable whenever it's talked about. And this does have impacts because a judge or lawyers can play on that idea of it being understandable or mercy killing in order to grant the murderer a lower sentence or even get away with it. So changing the conversation is effective and does need to happen on a wider scale more frequently. Challenging ableism everywhere you see it, challenging the idea that it's better to be dead than disabled, or that disabled people are on a drain on society. Challenging those ideas are a key part of that. And self-reporting too. If you think that you might harm your child or adult relative, you need to turn yourself in and you need to make sure that it doesn't happen. You can't make excuses for yourself. You need to own up to it and make sure it doesn't happen. And the final suggestion would be community reporting. If somebody confides in you that they're thinking about killing their disabled charge, you need to turn them in. You need to make sure that the proper authorities know about it, Child Protective Services or the police or anyone, just anyone who will listen. You need to make sure that it is known that other people will do something to help prevent it from happening, and you need to intervene if somebody confides in you about those sorts of intentions. But yeah.
Yeah, I think those are really good solutions. Like if you're feeling like you're going to do something bad, you should just report yourself. So to kind of prevent like those things are happening. Maybe you're having like, I don't know, like a mental break, or like you need a break or something, and you have these thoughts. You should definitely reach out to people to kind of prevent yourself from doing unspeakable things.
That's an easy mistake to make in a like individualist capitalist society, is to not utilize the community properly. And obviously that can lead to horrifying outcomes, not just on the large scale, but individually. Yeah.
Yeah. So Will, so what do you think about these solutions?
Yeah, I think this solution is really really good solution to do. And yeah, the person that have no thought, they need to like talk to the people around and maybe have some advice. I mean, not advice, but um, you do not think about those bad things.
Yeah, I think it's like having a support system, right?
Yeah, you having the support system. Like in backstage, they have some kind of support system when you break down.
You want to add
Yeah,
these suggested solutions are within the current frame of the society we live in now, in terms of relying on authorities, police, punishment laws, jail time to do the trick. But hopefully, as we grow as a society, we move away from these sorts of solutions and can find a better way of dealing with it that doesn't rely on the prison industrial complex and cops who hold too much power currently. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna end really soon. But before we end, does Ryan or Will have any last words? And also, Will, do you have any last words?
Last words, choose them carefully. Was anybody else put in mind of the elementary school era song where they'd have you like memorize all the states in lyric form?
Yeah.
When Rihanna was listing the 18, which
Mhm.
don't include disability, and that's way too many states.
Mhm.
I mean, it's all the ones you would expect, but it's way too many.
It's way too many.
Any
But yeah.
thoughts, Will?
Trying to think because this is the first time I know about it. That's just like all the story heavy. I just feel I don't know. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. It's my first time hearing about all these things too. It's really put things into perspective on how like serious it is and how it needs to be highlighted.
It's a very heavy topic, and I will recommend anybody who's listening to this now, if you're feeling absolutely horrible after listening to this, I don't blame you. It's a very heavy topic. Take the time to take care of yourself. Reach out to others who will listen, and text a trusted text line or call a trusted warm line. Just do whatever you need to do to feel better after listening to this, because it is important to talk about and listen to, but you also need to take care of yourself. So take care of yourself, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the end of our podcast episode. We talk about the disability of mourning and kind of told stories on it, kind of told you what it is and like our agenda. And it is important to kind of highlight these victims because they were murdered. Yeah, they were murdered. Rian, do you have anything else to say about the disability of mourning?
Well, I hope that people come to the vigil, but if you can't make it for whatever reason, I do understand. It will not be recorded, so it's kind of a you have to be there type of thing virtually, but you can take the time to honor the victims on your own in your own way if you wish, on the day of or the day after if you want. Anything counts, even if it's just like a tweet on social media on the day of, tagged appropriately as the Disability Day of Mourning 2022. But any sort of attention you can spare for this event is good attention. So
Absolutely. So we are hosting the Disability Day morning event, Vigil, on March 1st from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. It is going to be this Tuesday. If you need more information or want to attend, you can check us out on our social media, Instagram at Dana at Sac State. We have a poster that kind of describes everything like the Zoom link. And also our next meeting will be on this Thursday, March 3rd at 6:30 p.m. Where we will talk about disability as a form of diversity. Again, thank you so much for listening. This is a very harsh, very serious topic that needs to be highlighted. Thank you. Please check us out on our socials, blog series on kssc.com and our podcast. We have our podcast and club meeting schedule up on social media at Dana at Sex State for Instagram. If you missed anything or the previous episodes and club meetings, check us out on YouTube where we post our recordings there at Dana at Sex State. Again, we post podcast episodes through our lens every Mondays at 12 p.m. Again, thank you so much, everyone. Bye, everyone. # where's the ramp?
You're listening to Through Our Lens with the Disabled and Non-Disabled Alliance at Sacramento State, a club, organization, whatever, for disabled students, staff, and their allies to discuss and educate each other about disability-related topics, advocate on behalf of disabled students and the community, and to hang out together and just be a community.
So we want to be more recognizable to Sex State. So please join the conversation by following and messaging us on Instagram at Dana at Sex State. It's DANA at Sex State.